God is in control of your situation, just calm your mind. There comes a moment in every life when the noise becomes so loud that the soul begins to panic, when thoughts run faster than reason, and the heart asks questions it never planned to ask. It is in that moment that fear pretends to be wisdom and anxiety disguises itself as caution. You look at your circumstances and conclude, quite logically you think, that things have slipped beyond control, bills pile up, relationships strain, doors close without explanation, prayers seem unanswered, and silence feels like abandonment. Yet what if the silence is not absence but attention? What if the stillness is not neglect but precision? What if the very moment you think everything is falling apart is the moment everything is being held together more firmly than ever before? We often imagine control as noise and movement, as visible action, as immediate results that reassure our impatient minds. But the kind of control God exercises is of a different order altogether. It does not shout. It does not rush. It does not scramble to fix what surprises him, because nothing does. His control is quiet, deliberate, and complete, like the steady hand guiding a ship through fog while the passengers argue about the direction. You are looking at the fog and assuming danger, while he is looking at the destination and adjusting the course with calm authority. Your mind resists this idea because it wants proof that fits within the narrow limits of human logic. You want signs that can be measured, timelines that can be predicted, outcomes that can be guaranteed. But faith was never meant to be a mathematical equation. Faith is the decision to trust a mind greater than your own, when your own understanding reaches its edge and falls silent. It is choosing calm, not because the storm has stopped, but because you finally recognize who commands the storm. Think for a moment about how much of your distress comes not from what is happening, but from what you fear might happen. The mind has an extraordinary talent for borrowing trouble from the future and dragging it into the present, demanding that you suffer it in advance. Yet God does not live in anxious projections. He exists fully in every moment at once, seeing the end from the beginning with a clarity that leaves no room for panic. When he asks you to be still, it is not because nothing is happening, but because everything that needs to happen already is. Calming your mind is not an act of denial, it is an act of alignment. It is choosing to bring your thoughts into agreement with truth, rather than letting them wander through imagined disasters. When your mind is frantic, it becomes deaf to guidance. When it is calm, even a whisper can redirect your life. God is not competing with the noise you create. He waits for you to quiet it so you can finally hear him. You may say that if God were truly in control, things would look different by now. But this assumes that your comfort is the highest goal, when in reality your transformation is. Some lessons cannot be learned in peace. Some strengths cannot be developed without resistance. Some faith cannot mature without waiting. Control does not mean the absence of difficulty. It means that difficulty itself is being used with purpose. The pressure you feel is not random. It is measured, permitted, and limited. You are not being crushed, you are being shaped. Consider how often you have mistaken delay for denial. You prayed, you hoped, you believed, and when nothing changed, you concluded that heaven had turned away. Yet time and again, looking back, you can see that what you wanted too early would have harmed you, distracted you, or defined you too narrowly. God's timing is not slow, it is accurate. He does not rush the process because he sees what you are becoming, not just what you are escaping. To calm your mind, you must first accept that you are not required to understand everything you are asked to trust. Control does not require your comprehension, it requires your surrender. This is not the surrender of weakness, but of wisdom. The recognition that carrying the weight of the universe was never your assignment. You were designed to obey, to trust, to walk, not to manage outcomes that only God can see in full. Notice how peace enters not when answers arrive, but when you stop demanding them. There is a strange freedom in admitting that you do not know, and yet you are known. There is relief in realizing that even your confusion is not confusing to God. He is not reacting to your situation. He authored the path you are walking, even if you cannot yet read the map. The mind, left unchecked, will always default to control as a survival mechanism. It believes that if it can predict, plan, and prepare for every possibility, it can avoid pain. But control at that level is an illusion, and chasing it only multiplies anxiety. True peace comes not from managing every detail, but from entrusting every detail. When you release the need to orchestrate everything, you create space for God to move in ways you could never have planned. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not slipping through the cracks of some cosmic oversight. The same God who governs stars you cannot name is fully aware of the thoughts you cannot silence. If he can sustain galaxies without strain, he can sustain you without effort. Your situation has not grown beyond his reach simply because it has grown beyond yours. Calm your mind, not by convincing yourself that everything is fine, but by reminding yourself who is faithful. Let your thoughts return, again and again, to what has already been proven. You have survived moments you thought would end you. You have been guided through seasons you did not understand at the time. You have been protected from outcomes you once begged for. This pattern is not coincidence, it is character. Even now, while you wrestle internally, God is at work externally and internally in ways you cannot yet perceive. He is arranging conversations you have not had, opening paths you have not seen, and closing doors you would have walked through too soon. Your responsibility is not to foresee every step, but to take the next one in trust. When you calm your mind, you are not giving up, you are giving over. You are acknowledging that control has always belonged where it should, and that your task is to walk faithfully, not fearfully. The more you rest in this truth, the more you will notice that the chaos you feared begins to lose its authority over you, and the situation that once seemed overwhelming begins to feel strangely contained, as though invisible hands are holding it in place while you learn, grow, and prepare for what comes next, because even now there are movements unfolding beyond your sight, threads being woven together with patience and intent, and moments ahead that will only make sense when you realize that this very season, the one that demanded you calm your mind and trust without seeing, was never a pause or a mistake, but a carefully guided passage, leading you towards something that is still forming, still aligning, and still waiting for the exact moment when it will be revealed in full. You are learning, perhaps for the first time, that trust is not a feeling that arrives when circumstances improve, but a decision you return to when circumstances refuse to cooperate. It is easy to trust God when outcomes are pleasant and progress is visible. The deeper work happens when nothing seems to move, when prayers echo back in silence, and when the mind begins to argue that calm is irresponsible. Yet this is precisely where faith proves its strength. Calm in the midst of uncertainty is not naivety, it is maturity. It is the quiet confidence that even if you cannot trace his hand, you can trust his heart. Your situation feels personal because it is, but it is not unique in the way fear suggests. Every human life reaches this intersection where control must be relinquished, or anxiety will rule indefinitely. God does not bring you here to watch you fail. He brings you here to teach you how to rest without retreating, how to trust without seeing, how to obey without guarantees. The mind resists this because it equates rest with danger, yet the soul recognizes rest as home. You may notice that when you try to calm your mind, old worries resurface with greater force, as if they resent being dismissed. This does not mean peace is impossible. It means the mind has grown accustomed to chaos and must be retrained. Calm is not achieved once, but practiced repeatedly. Each time anxious thoughts arise, you gently but firmly return them to truth, not harshly, not in frustration, but with the steady discipline of someone who knows where safety lies. God's control is not fragile. It does not depend on your perfect faith, flawless obedience, or constant awareness. Even your doubts are not obstacles to him. He is not waiting for you to become fearless before he acts. He is working even as you tremble. The idea that your weakness could derail divine purpose gives your fear far too much credit. If God's plans depended on human steadiness, nothing would ever be accomplished. You are being invited into a different way of seeing, one where circumstances no longer dictate your inner state. This does not happen overnight, and it does not happen without resistance. The world teaches you to react, to worry first and think later, to panic as proof that you care. God teaches you to pause, to reflect, to remember. He knows that a calm mind can perceive truth that a frantic one will always miss. There is a reason why clarity often comes after surrender. When you finally stop trying to force answers, you create room for understanding. When you loosen your grip on outcomes, insight begins to surface. This is not mystical language, it is practical reality. Anxiety narrows your vision. Trust expands it. Fear makes you focus on what could go wrong. Faith trains you to notice what is being prepared quietly in the background. You are not meant to carry tomorrow on today's shoulders. Much of what troubles you belongs to a future you have not reached and may never experience in the way you imagine. God gives you grace in portions, sufficient for the moment you are in, not the hypothetical disasters your mind invents. When you try to live all moments at once, you exhaust yourself unnecessarily. Calm returns when you accept the limits of the present and let God handle what lies beyond it. It is worth considering how often you have survived without understanding how you would. There were moments when you had no plan, no clarity, no strength to spare, and yet you are here. You adapted, you endured, you were sustained. This was not accidental. It was not merely your resilience. It was provision at work, quietly filling gaps you did not even know how to name at the time. God's control often looks like restraint rather than intervention. He allows processes to unfold rather than interrupting them at the first sign of discomfort. This can be unsettling when you are accustomed to immediate solutions, but restraint is not neglect, it is wisdom. Some outcomes require patience because they are connected to growth that cannot be rushed without being damaged. Your calm does not depend on knowing how everything will turn out. It depends on knowing who is with you while it unfolds. Presence changes everything. Even hardship becomes bearable when you are not alone in it. God does not promise a lull, I feel free from trouble, but He promises companionship within it, guidance through it, and meaning beyond it. As you learn to calm your mind, you may notice that certain fears lose their power, not because circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has. What once felt urgent now feels manageable. What once felt overwhelming now feels contained. This is not denial, it is alignment. Your inner world is beginning to reflect a deeper truth. You are allowed to rest even while waiting. Waiting is not wasted time in God's economy. It is often where the most important internal work is done. While you wait, your character is being refined, your priorities clarified, your dependence recalibrated. The mind complains that nothing is happening, but the soul knows better. Do not underestimate the significance of learning to be still. Stillness is not inactivity, it is receptivity. It is the posture that allows guidance to be recognized and wisdom to be received. You are constantly reacting, you miss what is being offered quietly. Calm opens the door to discernment. God's control extends beyond the visible and the immediate. He is not merely responding to your present situation, He is positioning you for what comes next. What feels like delay may be protection. What feels like loss may be redirection. What feels like confusion may be preparation. Calm your mind not because you understand these things fully, but because you trust that they are real. You are not required to silence every thought, only to choose which ones you entertain. Some thoughts deserve attention, others deserve dismissal. Fearful speculation does not deserve your loyalty. Truth does. Each time you return to truth, you weaken the habit of anxiety and strengthen the practice of peace. Remember that God's control does not erase your responsibility, but it does redefine it. Your responsibility is to remain faithful, not flawless, to remain attentive, not anxious, to remain obedient, not omniscient. When you try to assume roles that were never yours, you burden yourself unnecessarily. There is a quiet courage in choosing calm when everything urges panic. It is an act of resistance against fear's demand for dominance. It is a declaration that your trust rests not in outcomes you can predict, but in a God who cannot fail. This courage grows with practice. It deepens with experience. It becomes, over time, a way of life. You may still feel uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer needs to terrify you. It can become a space of openness rather than dread, a place where expectation replaces anxiety, a place where you remain teachable rather than tense. God often does his most meaningful work in uncertain spaces because that is where reliance is most genuine. As your mind grows calmer, your perception sharpens. You begin to notice small evidences of care that you once overlooked, a timely conversation, an unexpected resource, a sense of restraint where you might have made a harmful choice. These are not random. They are gentle confirmations that control is present even when it is understated. Do not rush yourself through this process. Peace is not achieved through force, but through familiarity. The more often you return to trust, the more natural it becomes. The mind learns, slowly but surely, that calm is safe, that surrender is not dangerous, that trust is not fully. You are being held, even when you cannot feel it. You are being guided, even when direction seems unclear. You are being prepared, even when progress seems invisible. This is not wishful thinking. It is the consistent testimony of those who have walked this path before you and discovered, often in hindsight, that control was never absent, only quieter than their fear. And so you continue forward, not with all answers secured, but with your mind learning to rest in a truth deeper than explanation, a truth that does not shout for attention yet remains unshaken by circumstance, a truth that steadies your breathing even when questions remain unanswered, a truth that reminds you again and again that while you walk through uncertainty step by step, there is a greater certainty surrounding you at all times, guiding, sustaining, and holding everything together as the journey unfolds further, revealing its meaning gradually, patiently, and always in ways that invite you to trust just a little more with each passing moment. You may find that calming your mind is the hardest task because it feels unnatural at first. Your instincts scream to act, to analyze, to control, and to force outcomes into shapes that comfort your reasoning. Yet, there is a subtle, almost imperceptible power that begins to operate when you simply stop. It is in this stopping that you discover the breadth of God's control and the futility of your own attempts to dictate the unfolding of events. Each time you allow yourself to rest mentally and emotionally, you participate in a practice older than human anxiety itself, trust. You are participating in a rhythm of life that does not require constant oversight, because it is sustained by wisdom far greater than your own. Notice how often your fears involve imagined catastrophes that never materialize. Your mind, like an overzealous sentinel, conjures scenarios in which everything goes wrong, as though imagining disaster could somehow prevent it. Yet the truth is that God's governance does not require your imagination to intervene. Reality unfolds under his oversight, often correcting what your mind anticipates incorrectly. To calm your mind is not to ignore these potentialities, but to acknowledge that even when they appear plausible, they are already within his purview. There is no detail too small or too vast for divine consideration, no complexity beyond his capacity, no timing too delicate for his orchestration. Consider the nature of patience in this context. Patience is often framed as passive waiting, but when it is informed by trust, it becomes an active engagement with the present. You are not idly standing by while events happen around you. You are consciously observing, assessing, and choosing not to panic. You are participating in a partnership with a power that is far beyond your own, and in this partnership, your calm becomes a conduit for wisdom and guidance. Your stillness is not weakness, it is leverage. By learning to calm your mind, you allow space for insight, provision, and clarity to enter your consciousness. This calm is also transformative. As your mind begins to settle, the world appears differently. Problems do not vanish, but your perception of them shifts. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable become manageable. Decisions that once paralyzed you are now approached with clarity. You begin Oh, notice subtle threads of connection that were invisible in the fog of anxiety. Opportunities that previously passed unnoticed now appear in plain view. This is because when the mind is calm, it can perceive the underlying order that fear conceals. Divine control is often subtle. It rarely announces itself with fanfare, but when you are quiet, you can see the hand that has been guiding all along. Even when circumstances remain difficult, the act of calming your mind produces resilience. You begin to realize that your capacity to endure is not dependent solely on external resolution, but on an internal stability rooted in trust. The storms of life continue to test you, but you meet them differently. You do not allow panic to dictate your decisions. You are less reactive and more reflective. Your perspective expands, and you begin to see the larger pattern that weaves through your experiences. Nothing is wasted. Every encounter, every struggle, every moment of waiting contributes to the development of your character and your understanding. It is important to recognize that God's control does not eliminate responsibility. You are called to act, to respond, and to engage with the world around you. The difference is in how you act. Calmness does not mean inaction. It means acting from a place of clarity rather than panic, of discernment rather than compulsion. It means making choices informed by awareness of what is within your power and what is under the governance of a higher wisdom. When you act in this way, your efforts are magnified because they are aligned with a purpose that is greater than your own. You may experience moments when old patterns of worry and anxiety surface. This is natural. The mind is trained over years to default to fear, and breaking that habit takes persistence. Each time you return to calmness, you reinforce a new pattern. Each time you resist the urge to panic, you strengthen your capacity to trust. It is a discipline, not a single event. The rewards are cumulative, growing steadily as your mind and spirit adjust to the reality of a God who is fully aware and fully capable, even when you cannot see the full scope of his work. The practice of calming the mind also affects your interactions with others. When you carry peace within, it naturally radiates outward. You are less likely to react in frustration, less likely to transmit anxiety to those around you, and more able to engage with others with patience and empathy. Your calm becomes a stabilizing force, a subtle reflection of the control that is at work behind the scenes. People notice it, even if they cannot name it. It is a quiet testimony to a power that operates silently yet effectively. There is a profound connection between calmness and discernment. When the mind is noisy, it is difficult to recognize the path you are meant to take. Decisions are clouded by fear, overthinking, and imagined consequences. When you calm your mind, the clutter fades and clarity emerges. You begin to see not only what is necessary, but what is aligned with purpose. You begin to notice the doors that open and the ones that close for your good. You begin to understand that control does not require intervention in every detail. It often works through timing, alignment, and subtle influence. Faith grows in the soil of calmness. When you repeatedly choose to trust rather than panic, you cultivate a confidence that is not superficial but deep, rooted in the experience of God's consistent presence. Each act of surrender reinforces the understanding that you are not alone, that outcomes are not random, and that life is not a series of uncontrolled events but a tapestry woven with intentionality. This understanding does not make challenges disappear, but it equips you to face them with courage and wisdom. It is also vital to remember that God's control does not always align with human expectations. The outcomes you desire may not arrive in the form you anticipate. The timing may be different. The path may be unexpected. Yet this is not a failure of providence. It is a demonstration of its wisdom. What is given, withheld, delayed, or redirected is always for a purpose that ultimately serves growth, protection, or alignment with the highest good. Calmness allows you to accept these realities without despair, knowing that a higher understanding governs what you cannot yet see. In cultivating calm, you also discover the power of perspective. The trials that once seemed catastrophic are viewed with new understanding. The burdens that once felt unbearable are experienced with endurance. The chaos that once overwhelmed you is recognized as part of a larger order. Perspective does not eliminate difficulty, but it reframes it, providing a sense of stability and assurance that your human perspective alone cannot achieve. When you calm your mind, you allow perspective to take root and shape your response. Your relationship with time also changes. The present moment, which once felt like a source of anxiety, becomes a space for trust. You no longer rush through it in anticipation of resolution or lament the delays of divine timing. Instead, you inhabit it fully, aware that each moment is under the governance of God's control. This awareness brings peace. It prevents you from being enslaved by what has not yet occurred or what may never occur as you imagine. Time itself becomes a medium through which divine order is expressed, not a source of frustration. As your mind grows accustomed to calm, you notice a subtle shift in how you pray. Prayer becomes less about presenting demands or arguing for outcomes, and more about aligning with wisdom, seeking understanding, and offering gratitude. You begin to recognize that your requests are part of a dialogue rather than a negotiation, that your words are not the mechanism of change, but the expression of a relationship with one who already governs the change. This shift deepens your sense of peace and reinforces your trust in God's control. Even in the midst of ongoing challenges, you can cultivate a sense of joy, not superficial cheerfulness, but a deep, enduring joy that arises from confidence in God's presence and governance. This joy does not ignore reality, it embraces it with faith. It recognizes difficulty yet refuses to be dominated by it. It understands that true contentment is not contingent upon circumstances, but upon trust, perspective, and alignment with the ultimate source of stability. You are in this process learning a form of resilience that is both spiritual and practical. Resilience is not merely the ability to withstand adversity, it is the ability to remain functional, clear-headed, and purposeful amid adversity. Calmness fosters this resilience by preventing panic, clarifying thought, and preserving energy for what matters. By choosing to calm your mind, you protect your capacity to act wisely rather than react impulsively. This practice also nurtures humility. You recognize that control is not yours to hold, that the universe is not governed by your understanding, and that your insight, while valuable, is limited. Humility is not defeat, it is recognition of reality and alignment with what is true. When you calm your mind and acknowledge God's control, you step into a posture of partnership rather than dominance, participating in life from a position of wisdom rather than folly. With each passing day, you discover that calmness becomes easier, that trust becomes more natural, that anxiety loses its grip. The mind, once frenetic, begins to adopt a rhythm of peace. Your heart learns to rest even amid uncertainty. Your decisions reflect clarity rather than confusion. Your interactions radiate patience. Your perception aligns more closely with reality rather than fear. You begin to live in a state where faith is active and calm is habitual. You notice, too, that God's control manifests in unexpected ways. Solutions appear when you are no longer demanding them. Opportunities present themselves when you have stopped orchestrating them. Lessons arrive precisely when you are ready to receive them. This pattern repeats across situations, reinforcing the truth that calm is not passive but participatory, that trust is not resignation but engagement, and that control is not ours to seize but ours to recognize and submit to. You come to understand that surrender is not the absence of action, but the redefinition of it. Action is no longer frantic or reactive. It is measured, intentional, and guided by awareness of divine governance. You learn to take steps that matter, to act within your sphere of influence, and to release what lies beyond it. Each act of disciplined calm strengthens your capacity to navigate life with wisdom and peace. This practice of calmness transforms not only how you face challenges, but how you perceive success. Success is no longer defined by immediate outcomes, wealth, recognition, or avoidance of hardship. It is defined by faithfulness, clarity, resilience, and alignment with divine purpose. The measure of life becomes less about what you control and more about how you respond to what is controlled. Calmness enables you to achieve this understanding, to live with intention even when external circumstances are turbulent, and as this understanding deepens, you begin to see a pattern that runs through every area of your life. Every situation, every relationship, every challenge, every blessing is part of a greater order that you do not fully see but can trust. Chaos is reduced to a manageable perception. Difficulty becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The mind that once raced with fear now pauses, evaluates, and discerns. In this space, you discover the profound truth that God's control is both comprehensive and subtle, encompassing the seen and unseen, the immediate and the distant, the significant and the trivial, all while never losing sight of your well-being and purpose. In the end, the lesson is simple, yet profound. Your peace is not found in the absence of challenges, nor in your ability to control every outcome. It is found in the quiet trust that God is fully aware, fully present, and fully in control of your life, even when circumstances seem uncertain or overwhelming. When you calm your mind, you align yourself with a wisdom far greater than your own, and you discover that fear loses its grip, clarity emerges, and resilience takes root. Life does not need to be solved by your hands alone. It is guided by a presence that never falters, never overlooks, and never abandons. So choose stillness, embrace trust, and walk forward with the confidence that every detail of your journey is being held, directed, and woven together for your good, your growth, and your ultimate fulfillment. In that calm, in that surrender, you finally experience the peace that surpasses understanding and the profound assurance that you are never alone and that every step, every trial, and every blessing is perfectly orchestrated by the one who holds all things in his hands.